Recently, I've been thinking a ton about the versions of football teams that we accept. The iteration, the Sunday shower-uppers, the once a week, once in every 4 games maybe, twice a season, versions of our teams, be that their ceiling, their floor, or something in between, that we as fans believe are the true colors for the team that we are perceiving. This can apply to your own team. It absolutely applies to your enemies, your least favorite team, because of course they are fraudulent, illegitimate, never to be taken seriously, always refutable if they succeed, and always their real selves when they fail, and this likely applies to every other team in this sport that you deem relevant, no matter what type of fan you are. Because at the end of the day, I've got my brown shirt on, every team in this sport is going to be relevant at some point in the season. Just ask the Green Bay Packers that. No team is incapable of winning a game, stealing a game, revealing your team's true colors, maybe. Week 3 is an interesting point in the NFL season to have this conversation, I think, because we're still a part of quarter 1 here, so to speak. The opening stage of the NFL season is generally not accepted. We don't really accept the versions of any teams that we see. That's certainly not the case in week 1. Week 1, I would say, is pure entertainment. We're seeing guys for the first time, coaches, quarterbacks, coordinators. Week 2 is where patterns start to emerge. Things are no longer a coincidence if they happen more than once. Doesn't mean they're legit though. But then week 3 is where we really start having to come to terms with things. Take, say, the Houston Texans. Take 0-3 teams in general. Since 2005, I believe it is, only one team has started 0-3 and gone on to make the playoffs. That's a reality check for you. That's a reality check for most teams, most 0-3 teams. It's hard in week 3, where narratives, I think, begin to emerge, to deny reality the same way that we once did before the season started. We might have to accept that this version of the Texans that has been put on tape through 3 weeks, for instance, is what they will be remembered as by season's end. Early season football in general is funny because when you try to have a conversation with most people about what's gone on so far, if you try to sound too high and mighty, too informative to them, they will probably laugh at you because, generally speaking, early season football is the most delegitimized point in the season. The most dismissed. By the start of next season, it is the part of the last season that we think the least about. And I get it, that's fair. So much changes by the end of a season, by the postseason. But in a lot of other ways, this kickoff here, this first quarter, this plane getting off the runway stage is the most revealing part of the NFL calendar when it comes to teams as organizations, as their entire entities, and about the way that things might go for you, for your team, your organization, the group you support, or if you're in the league, the group you are a part of. Because the way that I look at it, football exists in 3 buckets, 3 columns, 3 categories, and these 3 nodes exist to me as like fractals. They can be scaled down and they can be scaled up. You can kind of look at living life this way too, I would argue. 3 stages: planning, execution, reflection. Pre-game, in-game, post-game. Camp, season, off-season. And when you think about it this way, football this way, anything this way, it kind of means that most of the football here is played when the game is not actually being played. Stick with me here. And so if that is the case, which I think it is, the early season in the NFL is a great time, an incredibly meaningful time, an insightful time, because it gives us a real good look at the question, does this organization know who it is? Does this bunch, this group, have thoughts that immediately, from the jump, as soon as they place their first foot down, align with their actions? That might sound like a bunch of funny nothingness, I get it, but I do think there is something to this. To the fact that early season football is so revealing in this way, and yet so commonly, so widely refuted, dismissed, and not accepted. Because this concept of cognitive dissonance to me, which to quickly define is when your thoughts and your actions do not align, and so rather than changing your actions, you change your thoughts to justify those actions. This concept, and the fact that it is so prevalent among fans and organizations early in the football season, I think it tells us a lot about the true nature of football in relation to our perception of the game of football. So let's examine early season football. Let's talk about what has worked early, which teams have thoughts that do align with their actions, which ones don't, and what that all means, and what it might mean come the postseason, come the playoffs, and what might actually be useless. I do think there's something to be had here. Truth finding in quarter 1. Here we go. So I want to start with this. I want to start with defense. Early season football, success-wise, seems to be strongly tied to the teams that have the most successful defenses. Defense in general feels extremely king early in the NFL calendar. I just saw a stat the other day that cumulatively across the league, NFL offenses are combining for fewer yards per game through this stretch than they have in like 25 years. This time last season, I remember seeing a very similar stat related to touchdowns. A lot of this has to do with how there are fewer possessions in games now, which is tied to better kickers, better kickoff returns, more efficient top-tier offenses. But a lot of this is also just tied to the fact that early season offenses suck. And now dissonance-wise, delusion-wise, there is something super easy to highlight here in relation to offense versus defense and truth versus imagination. I think it is a lot easier to align your thoughts, your plans with your actions and reactions on the defensive side of the ball than the offensive side. And here's why I say that. Take the Minnesota Vikings. Through 3 weeks, the Minnesota Vikings defense has added more expected points to their team's total point output than the offense has by a significant margin. In fact, this past week, their defense scored 2 touchdowns. One player from their defense scored 2 touchdowns. This past offseason, a member of the Vikings defense, the Vikings secondary, which I think is relevant, said that this team is basically running a master's level program at this point on that side of the football. These guys have been together forever. Are they the most talented bunch in the league? No, not even close. But have they been the most effective through 3 weeks? Have they had the most impact? I would argue yes. The Minnesota Vikings and their defensive plan heading into this season was a fantastic example of a team and organization aligning their thoughts with their actions. And to me, a lot of that has to do, again, with the fact that continuity here works different than on offense. 1. There is no such thing as a quarterback on the defense. Your identity and your talent, defined definitive talent, is just a lot more flexible on this side of the ball. There are sub-packages on defense. Personnel varies greatly on defense. Defensive coordinators kind of fly more under the radar than good OCs. That's its own conversation though. And most importantly, I kind of just hinted to it, but defense is about reaction. I think that offenses in this sport planning action are extremely dependent on talent, more so than the defensive side, specifically talent at the quarterback position. And I think that defenses, in turn, as highlighted by a group like, say, the Vikings, care a lot less about talent and a lot less about action and a lot more about planning their possible necessary reaction. That's what the Vikings do great. Whatever you bring out on the field, whoever the quarterback may be that you trot out, whatever the strengths and weaknesses of your team and your offense, the Vikings have planned a really detailed answer to it. They wait for you to show them something, and then they show you something even crazier. A lot of defenses do this. This works early in a way that a lot of offenses haven't worked early, and I do think that this is because of a truth about the nature of defense, what I just addressed, that fluidity and that action versus reaction. I think that the Chargers are another great example of this. I think that the Seahawks, the Legion of Whom this year, are a great example of this. By all means, a top 10 defense in the back half of last year, a top 10 defense immediately this year, without the biggest names in the world, but with continuity, a great planned reactor planner, I should say, Mike McDonald, much like the Chargers with Jesse Minter, much like that Vikings secondary. None of these units on their own on paper will blow you away, but by realizing the truth about what makes for a great defense, they have avoided failure and avoided delusion. The Broncos are a cool example of this. The Packers are a great example of holding the line and trusting that you might just get a needle mover to bump things up. Just don't shake things up. The Cowboys, of course, are the biggest example in the history of ever of what not to do. A #1 defense over the last 4 years of football when Micah Parsons was on the field by EPA per play, 32 when he was not on the field. Now they're going to be 32. Pretty comfortably, I'd say. It all just adds up, and it shows us what is true on this side of the ball. What teams should be thinking about in the offseason. Did we shake things up? Are we introducing too many new factors, variables? Are we putting too much faith in a first-time or unproven reactor planner? That's not to say that bad defenses early can't be great defenses late, but it is to say that if you're going to have a defense that is elite by season's end, it's pretty likely that you'll see that early, much more likely than on the offensive end. And so the offensive end, in comparison, by contrast. Today's video is sponsored by ArenaClub. I'm a collector of many things: performative football books, football t-shirts, cards when I was younger, cards in a different manner now, football action figures. I've got shoeboxes full at my childhood home. It's fun. Collecting things is fun. Having a stake in things is fun. Having that stock, so to speak, in something or someone that you are invested in. ArenaClub believes that the future of collecting and of trading lies in tying that childhood feeling, a feeling that you may be familiar with, of collecting, amounting in the physical and pairing that with the virtual. For multiple sports, not just football at that. ArenaClub is the most trusted name in the game when it comes to this future of card collecting. They offer full transparency when it comes to whatever type of pack you want to buy, showing you every card in the pack that you're looking at with the potential you have of pulling each one. And once you open your pack, you get to 1, see exactly what you pulled, instantly, and 2, you get an immediate offer from ArenaClub for your card. You can gauge that value. Their slab packs come in a number of different tiers, prices, from $25 miscellaneous packs all the way up to diamond packs. I recently opened a ruby pack and I pulled Joe Burrow. Not the best time, I would argue, to have a Joe Burrow in my collection, but hey, I mean, he's one of my favorite players. If you saw my video last week, you would know that. It's nice, I think, to show him some support, so to speak, at this down moment in his season career. And what's more here, the cards that you pull from ArenaClub, they don't have to be just digital. From your showroom, you can trade, sell, auction, or retrieve your physical card from the ArenaClub vault. The packs are digital, but the cards are real. I think it's pretty cool. I think it's fun. And right now, if you want to check out ArenaClub, you can get 20% off your first slab pack or card purchase by going to arenaclub.com/ESQANT and use code ESQANT. There's always something over there, and once more, if it interests you, you can say that Anthony sent you. Thanks again to ArenaClub for helping me with this vid. I'm really enjoying how much I've been able to post during this football season. Now back to the video. Conversation about early season offense in football is delusion land, dissonance land. I could probably count on one hand the amount of teams that actually knew themselves heading into this year fully. We know the truths about good offense in football these days, and I feel like dragging it doesn't accomplish much of anything. The offensive line matters radically. Few things are more important than that. The Texans realizing now that they may have been delusional to trade Laramie Tunsil and not draft an offensive tackle when Josh Connerly and Josh Simmons were on the board in the back half of round 1. The Dolphins and their inability to run the ball. The Bears and their inability to run the ball. The Titans and their inability to pass protect for Cam Ward. Few truths these days are bigger in the sport of football than the fact that offensive line dictates just about everything else in this sport, and yet few truths are so routinely ignored. And again, I think that's just the dissonance here talking. The action that would be necessary to cure this dissonance would be to get a good offensive line, and that's just not that easy to do. But I'll be damned if teams shouldn't be trying, and we all see the reason why. I think young quarterbacks is another great example of why early season offense struggles, why delusion exists, and why we don't really accept the early season versions of our teams as their true selves. The average age for starting quarterbacks in this sport these days is the youngest it's ever been, pretty much. That was true like 3 years ago. I assume it's still pretty true now. Quarterback matters a lot. We draft it higher than ever. We know we need to develop these guys during their rookie contracts. That's best for everybody. And so we often rush these guys out onto the field, and in the off-season, the planning stage prior to this action stage, we convince ourselves that everything will be just fine. Very quickly, we realize that defenses have a philosophical, conceptual edge when it comes to continuity and fluidity, and very quickly we often tend to realize that we were probably generous in our estimation for our quarterbacks, and their chemistry with their receivers. From Cam Ward's pass catchers to Michael Penix Jr.'s atrocious chemistry with the Falcons downfield, to Bo Nix and his shaky play in spite of a decent year last year by the end, to like the Anthony Richardson experiment of past seasons. A lot of teams jump the gun, and a lot of teams now are realizing that they might have jumped the gun. J.J. McCarthy's week 2 performance for the Vikings. Bryce Young, I love him, but still kind of looking like the Bryce Young of previous years. The truth about effective offense early in the NFL season and in the postseason is that offensive line matters, mobile quarterback play matters quite a bit. You need a floor raiser from the jump, especially with how too high-shelled this sport is now, how hard it is to get explosive plays through the air. You want to minimize true dropbacks for your quarterback, maximize play action, screen passes, motion rates. That often pairs with having a great offensive line and a play caller who can use that offensive line. These are cliches, but these are truths that we see from the best offenses early and do often see in the postseason as well. It's pretty funny, but like without the Kansas City Chiefs doing what they have done over the past couple of seasons, there's pretty much zero instances of a team looking bad at this stuff early and looking great at this stuff later on. The seeds are almost always planted off rip. And the main reason that success stories aren't more linear is, well, injuries and small bits of bad luck, truly. All in all, when we talk about the things that we know for sure after a couple of weeks of football, these truths, I do think we all agree that we know these truths to be self-evident. It's almost annoying sometimes. I mean, maybe this video has been annoying you. Talking to certain fans, how smug they sound, echoing these cliches. Trenches over everything. Defense wins championships. Be good, avoid hard stuff, and do easy stuff. They're classics, and they're classics for a reason. I mean, they are true. The teams who do this stuff are consistently good. But again, To the original point of this video, the majority of the league for the majority of most seasons and most of the calendar year does dissent from these ideas. They do ignore them. Arrogant fans who call you woke and tell you that you don't see their timeline, their big picture, that your team is fraudulent, and that their team has either cracked the code or will crack the code. Their struggles, they're gonna get solved. Any real observations you have about their flaws, they won't matter in the long run. And their thoughts and perceptions here, they matter more than the tracked, charted, observable reality of football, of this sport. From the Eagles winning football games in spite of their passing splits, to the Chiefs of 2022 through 2024 looking incredibly unremarkable for most regular seasons, to the Patriots of old telling you, don't overreact to weeks 1 through 4, we are figuring our stuff out, to the development of Josh Allen on the Bills, to rookie year Jaden Daniels last year even, Bo Nix even. For as much evidence as there is that the things I have just talked about that are working for teams thus far, that those things are the ultimate things that matter in the postseason, there is equally just as much evidence that the teams that aren't checking these boxes, aren't doing these things from the jump, are winning in fraudulent ways, are doing things that they on paper shouldn't be doing, that it works, that football is just as much about that stuff. And that, I think, is the point that I really want to get here in this week 3 reflective video. The idea that, truth aside, dissonance front and center, if a team is succeeding, I don't think delusion is bad. In fact, I think it's really important. In fact, in sports and in life, I think that a healthy amount of output-based delusion is good. Imperative, even. Especially once you've gotten off the ground. Or are about to get off the ground, or trying to get off the ground. We won, so who cares? We might have lost this one, but we have some excuses and we're ready for next week. We're young, we're promising, it doesn't matter. We're up next, nobody believes, we don't care. We trust in our coach, we trust in our quarterback, we trust in our planning, in ourselves, in our evaluations, recalibrations, reflections. Because in sports and in life, I believe that there are 2 types of people who are supposed to be delusional, who need to be dissonant. The fans and the players. Analysts can go suck it. Because the players here are the ones who chase success, and the fans are the ones who support those players in pursuit of their success, their dreams. A couple of weeks ago, Brandon Aubrey broke a field goal record as the Cowboys went on to beat the Giants in a wild shootout game. When asked about how he did what he did after the game and how he consistently does what he does, Aubrey responded that the reason for his continued success, it was just one word: overconfidence. Overconfidence. Irrational confidence. More than you may necessarily warrant. I think about JJ McCarthy in week 1 and the fact that he struggled all game, but he was still in the game phase. He was still in the action phase where things need to happen and where his story has not yet been completed. I think about how in the huddle, amidst the peak of his struggles in that performance, McCarthy allegedly turned to his teammates and asked them one question: where else would you rather be right now? I think about the team on my shirt, the Cleveland Browns beating the Packers this past week, in spite of all of the praise that the Packers have been getting thus far this season. I think about the Colts, currently sitting at 3-0 with Daniel Jones as their quarterback because they did not care what the media and analysts had to say about them from the outside, what the logical perspective was to have on them. That did not matter. What mattered was what they thought they could do with what they have. I think about the Lions on Monday, how all offseason long they were told that they might have missed their window, how with 8 new coaches in their building, a new Micah Parsons in their division, 2 playoff teams from last season in their division, their own coordinator on another team in their division, heading into Monday Night Football at 1-1, playing the most loaded roster in the NFL, this team just did what it does and converted in a ton of high-risk, high-leverage scenarios because they second-guessed 0 things about themselves throughout this process, throughout their action phase, and how they put the planning time in as well to ensure that this would work. Because when you really think about this, the 3 phases of football, as I outlined them before, the 3 buckets, planning, acting, and evaluating, reflecting, they can really be broken down into 2. Action and thought. And the truth about effective action, I think, is that it is only as effective as an individual is competent. Sure, at some point, you might have to pop your head up out of the sand and realize, accept that you may have been, by definition, delusional. Sure, from that moment of reflection onwards, prior to a season's beginning and following a season's end, an action, well, success in that phase is largely dependent on your ability to plan, the mental side, on reality, on figuring out what these truths truths are and figuring out how to best approach them, the observable facts about our game and our world. But once that game kicks off, once that action goes underway, confidence stems from nothing other than trust in yourself. Irrational confidence, delusional confidence, a refusal to accept anything other than the best version of yourself as the real one. As the writer and former football player Harry Miller once put it, I will live until I die. As Napoleon once put it, destiny urges me to a goal of which I am ignorant. Until that goal is attained, I am invulnerable, unassailable. When destiny has accomplished her purpose in me, a fly may suffice to destroy me. You need to be insane. Fans need to be insane. These players need to be insane. And I think it is imperative that outside perspectives, logical perspectives, recognize that. There are two phases here, and one of them is all about that. And I think that's the coolest thing of all here. That's why I want to talk about this right now. Wanted to. Because yes, the early season is revealing. Yes, it's telling. Yes, it's undressing. We get to see who's aligned with the truth, and a lot of teams might not be. The Emperor might have no clothes, and adding to the madness, that peasant over there, that other guy, he might think he's next to be Emperor. But if those delusions work, if that perseverance causes you to either rise to the top or stay at the top, then the rest, the reality here, it does not matter in the slightest. Truth is unpredictable anyways. So much changes from week to week, from season to season. Chaos, injuries. I mean, the facts, the stats that we use to gauge what is currently true about football, they are grounded in the past. They cannot look forward. The ultimate truth here that I think I am getting at, that is probably doing way too much for a measly week 3 video about the NFL season, is that your actions, I think, no matter what team you are as meaningful as you make them. And your goals here, your potential for accomplishment, well, that too is as real as you make it. So why not make them the best possible thing that they can be? Why not believe that that is attainable? And when it's action time, why not trust in yourself and worry about the rest later, when you rest? I think that's all I've got for today. Thank you for watching. Thank you for watching this video. It's funny, when I was first thinking about what I wanted to talk about this week, it was going to be defense and, strategies there are in the NFL that are working right now through 3-4 weeks, whatever. The schematic side, the X's and O's, and what that might actually mean. And the more that I sat with that stuff, and the more that I thought about that stuff, the more that I just got drawn to the bigger picture here. Yes, there absolutely is meaning and truth and reality in terms of what has happened so far this season, but I think the idea of rejecting that reality and saying, who cares? I'm gonna do my own thing. My team is, at least, is just as important, if not more important. Certainly more fun. Maybe that's just because I'm a Pats fan and things have not bounced our way thus far this season, or maybe that just speaks to the type of football fan, football watcher I am in general. But either way, I hope you found this conversation interesting. I hope you enjoyed this style of video. If not, no hard feelings. And I hope you come back next week. I hope you leave a comment. I hope you enjoy these conversations that there are to be had. See ya.